Going on? It's True Rhymes, Niggly Teaching Honesty, back at you with The Climb. So, in our previous episodes, we've covered what inspired me to become a vocalist when I was a kid, how I became an MC, also what SHC is, as far as, the artist collective and band that Spontaneous Human Combustion is. So, we are picking up on, the end of SHC. The band had broken up. It's the end of 2008. I am starting to become like a gypsy kind of at this point, and I didn't even know it. So we're staying at my boy's crib, getting real involved in the EDM scene, throwing house parties. We ended up having to move out of his crib, moving to another dude's crib for a while, another close friend of mine, and his family, and stayed there for a little while. End up kind of meeting his brother and moving into his house, throwing even more parties and getting into just a bunch of crazy ass shit, getting real lost in drugs. You know what I'm saying? Like lost in the party life, lost in drugs, and kind of putting down music for a while. And it was like 3 to 6 months that I wasn't really even trying to make tracks or anything. You know what I'm saying? I was just kind of lost, and just being a fucking rock star, just not doing any music though. So I worked at this pizza place in my neighborhood called Amadeo's Pizza, and I met a homeboy there. We used to smoke and stuff like that, and I remember back when we would all freestyle. He was like, I don't know, I tried to spit before, and people didn't really feel it, so he hadn't really continued to pursue rhyming and shit like that. And so he spit his rhymes to me, and I was like, that's tight, bro. You know what I'm saying? Like, I fuck with that. So there was another cat that he knew, that I knew, and I guess they had decided to start spitting and shit like that. And so I was like, well, let's do a track together. So we tried to do a track that didn't really work out. Like the studio session didn't really go that well that day, for whatever reason. And so I hadn't heard from them in a few months, and they reached back out to me, and they tell me that they've started to record themselves, and that they're putting out a project, and they have a song that they want me to feature on. So I accept the offer to do the feature. I hadn't really talked to them in the time frame of me kind of doing all this partying and shit. So I kind of really got super inspired at this point to start spitting again, and kind of just bully my way into the situation, because I was like, oh well, I can get us some shows and blah blah blah, you know what I'm saying? So me and one of the artists basically started managing the situation. So they had a group called Stackhouse Music. Shout out to Young Joe, Dan K, anybody else that's involved in Stackhouse Music. So we started working together real close for a while, and I was really trying to just stop partying and get over the drugs and shit like that. I, at this point in time, also kind of moved in with a homie, and I actually, he's like my brother now. What up, Lo? But I didn't really know him well back then. I went to his house. He was like, hey, let's do a track. I went to his house, and he started engineering some tracks that I was gonna put on the demo. And so, I'm there living at his crib, just smoking all kinds of weed, just still trying to kick the drugs, got the drugs in my pocket, still pushing them and shit, you know what I'm saying? So it took a lot of willpower to just tough it out and just say fuck this shit, you know what I'm saying? And so I spent just a good month just like in the studio every day with another buddy of mine. And so, like, I'm working with Stackhouse Music. I'm working with my other buddy, getting back into doing music. And I was working with my buddy Andrew, MC Money, that I had brought up in a previous episode. We dropped a couple tracks together. I had a track called Last Night. I have a track called Last Night on an album called Substance Abuse, but it had originated from this track that I had put on my first demo called Last Night. The hook's still the same, but the verses were different and the beat was different. So we're working on these tracks together. We do a couple other tracks, and I start working closely with the Stackhouse Music cats. We're coming up together, like, they were really good at, like, just consistently putting out music, you know what I'm saying? So it kept me real busy, and I did probably like 30-40 collaboration verses with them in the time that we were working together. People out there, like, because we were slanging CDs around Stackhouse Music's era, around me being in there in the group. So I'm out here pushing mad CDs, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I remember when I first started pushing CDs, it was just to get into a Head PE show, you know what I'm saying? They were in town, and I was like, fuck it, like, let's just burn the 4 tracks that I got on some CDs and go sell them for $5 a piece at the fucking university and shit. And so that was my game for a long time too, actually, is just, going to the university, passing out flyers, selling CDs and shit like that, and I'm basically homeless this whole time still, you know what I'm saying? Like, I worked with them for like 1 or 2 years, and so I'm hopping around, sleeping on couches, sleeping in cars, sleeping any fucking where that I possibly can, you know what I'm saying? Like, sleeping a lot on on the couch at the Stackhouse headquarters. We played to 3,000 plus people in this arena, opening up for some big names: Nelly, Pretty Ricky, Lil Rob, the New Boys. They knew somebody who had put that all together. That was a really dope opportunity. We also, the next year, had made a trip out to Los Angeles and recorded some music out there in Compton. And I'm gonna tell y'all like this, for real. Like, it was tight being out there. And Kendrick's Good Kid, Mad City album, when he said, like, he was trying to make it feel like Compton, that fucking record feels like Compton. But yeah, so soon after we got back from recording the album, we just kind of split and went into our own directions. It's 2012 now, still homeless as a motherfucker. Kind of just decided that it was not fucking for me. So I decided to start working at this call center, and I took all the verses that they had erased and put a lot of them onto a project called The Recycle of Life. You can find that anywhere, The Recycle of Life mixtape. And started working on another project called Therapy Session that was inspired by an incident that happened. So I deal with like a lot of spiritual shit, and some people don't get it. My sister, she's dealt with, spiritual things herself, and doesn't really like to feed into it, you know what I'm saying? She don't like fuck with it and shit. So there were some situations that happened, some spiritual situations that happened, with her, and she, for whatever reason, decided maybe I might need, some help, some like a psychiatric evaluation or something like that. I had a conversation with my aunt, and I guess she didn't really feel like I was mentally stable, and so they both decided that they were going to stage this intervention that happened. It all kind of gets portrayed in the intro track for Therapy Session, Cops showed up at my mom's house. It was my grandmother's birthday, and they tell me that my sister had called them, that she felt like, threatened by me, and that they were told that I was talking about 2012 and people needed to die, and they were just checking up on the call that they got. And so I step outside, I talk to them, I'm like, I feel great today, whatever. So they end up stepping off, doing, just going on with their day. And you can imagine how that was. I felt very betrayed by the situation. You know what I'm saying? And later on, I've forgiven them already. But I understood it was out of the bottom of their heart. Like, they were trying to make sure that I was doing all right, up here, upstairs. And that's good, that I have caring people in my life like that. I can recognize that. But that's what inspired Therapy Session. Started working on Therapy Session when I was a kid. I guess, when I was like 18 years old, I'm out here pushing, hustling and stuff like that. And I went and bought this like really expensive fucking microphone, like $400 or something like that. And I've had this mic for a long time. Couldn't really use it because it was the only piece of equipment that I had. And I'm like taking care of all of the homeboys that used to like hang around and shit like that. I'm like feeding us every day and shit like that. And so like basically only have this microphone. And so I met this cat named Jesh Booth. He produced a lot of the beats. I think he produced actually every beat on Therapy Session. He engineered the record for me. He shot the videos for So Close, My Kind of Therapy. There's a bonus track on Therapy Session called Bailout. Shout out to Relic. He's on the track. You can find the whole track on my SoundCloud. The video only has my one verse. It was kind of like a teaser. There's a video for Bailout, and there's a video for a track off of the Recycle of Life mixtape called Smoke and Mirrors. And, he produced that beat as well. So I meet him and show him the microphone, and he's like, I'm down to trade you these beats and some studio time for this microphone, right? So I trade him the microphone for the beats for Therapy Session and the studio time, and we just start lacing it up. At this point I decided, fuck it, let's just start fucking funneling all of our money into this project. And so I'm working at this call center. Somebody hits me up one day, and they're like, yo, Hobson's in town, blah blah blah. This was I actually had met Hobson before he became big in like 2011. I was dating a homegirl, and her brother was in a group that opened up for him. It was like 50-person show, something real small. He just dropped Sag My Pants and shit like that. And so met him, probably left a real sour taste in his mouth. Like, I was fucked up, just being retarded and shit like that. Just wild, obnoxious motherfucker. Heckling him from the crowd and shit like that. Just sometimes you gotta learn that, like, just tone it the fuck down. You like never know. Like, this the one thing I fucking learned is like sometimes you need to just tone it the fuck down. Like, humble yourself, and you never fucking know who is the next up to be, the next big thing or whatever, or just pop. Because I've fucked up a couple of opportunities in my time just not networking the right way. You know what I'm saying? So learn from that situation. If you're an artist, get the fuck over yourself. Humble yourself. Learn how to network right, because you never know who could really help you out in the end. And like, don't do it just for the help. Do it just to be not a fucking douchebag. But you never know. That's like how some people come up in the game, is they build relationships with people look at Royce the 5'9", you know what I'm saying? He built a relationship with Eminem. Eminem got his break, brought Royce around. They may have went through their, like, you know, their beef or whatever, but now Royce is on top because in the end, real people are going to stick around real people and shit. But, yeah, so that was in 2011. Met Hobson. He blows up next year. 2012, he's on you know, the Funk Volume Tour. He had signed Izzy Wright. Fucking Jaron Benton had just been signed. So we're like hanging out around the show, trying to pass out CDs and shit. And I like walk up to Dame, and I'm like, yo, I've been following y'all. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, here's my demo, blah blah blah. And so I don't really necessarily know what happened. I don't know the details. I had somebody representing me. I had a homeboy representing me back then. His number was on the CDs and shit, or his email. He gets hit up by them. Something goes down. They were talking about taking me on the road and maybe signing us for a project, or, you know, an album deal or something like that. I don't really necessarily know exactly what happened. That's just kind of the information I was given. And then I guess they started having issues with the Joker. That whole shit was starting to happen. And they backed out. That's what I was told. So at this point, therapy sessions out. Still working at this call center. Worked at the call center for like 11 months, like almost a year. They fired me for not being able to, you know, produce results for, you know, they were a fundraising company. They would call up fucking old people and harass them with 12 different fucking campaigns a day, just like, give us your money, you know, you're old and you're a nice lady. Just like, I swear to God, it just literally killed pieces of my soul to work there sometimes. So, you know, I didn't really do very good at the job most of the time, but you know, I got have a motherfucking mouthpiece on me, and I motivate people, so I kept the job for that long at least. Get fired, go on unemployment, and use the unemployment money to finish putting out the record, to start to put out, you know, the Recycle of Life, do the music videos, and we lead into me getting my job back there for 6 months, getting fired again, and going on the first tour that I had ever been on, just, you know, as an artist trying to do music and shit. Met a cat named Kango. What up, bro? And he had an RV. Like, I met him randomly one night, and I don't remember what the fuck we were doing. Like, we just ended up, like, hanging out. And I was trying to chase Warped Tour. I was trying to follow Warped Tour. You know, homeboy was, like, drilling Kevin Lyman, trying to get us on the bill. And I guess he had made some, you know, contact with him. And he was like, yeah, you know, if we see y'all following the tour and you do well enough in the parking lot, you know, maybe we'll give you a chance to play one of the little stages inside of the festival. So we kind of didn't actually even get to follow Warped Tour that year. Kango didn't have his ends together and didn't really, like, trust me to pay for everything. So, you know, he got himself a job, and it took us like another month to get on the road. But I was like, let's fucking go. You know, I used all of that unemployment money for us to tour, and, you know, I cut more records and stuff like that. Substance Abuse was actually recorded off of the unemployment money as well. Before I even knew that it was going to come together as a project, I was just like, you know, mashing out tracks and stuff like that, and that ended up becoming a project because I decided, like, let's take all these beats that the homeboy put together and just make a project about it, you know, the concept and shit. So go get into his RV, travel all the way to Columbus, Ohio. It's 2014 at this point, and you know, link up with Rossetti, spend a few, 5 weeks out there with Rossetti, just tearing up fucking Columbus, doing open mics and all, talent nights and shit like that. And get back on the road and go to Indianapolis, Indiana. That was tight. We went to St. Louis, Missouri. St. Louis, another one of our home away from homes. Just fucking love St. Louis so fucking much. Shout out Young Jinx. Young Jinx was on a tour that I was on last year, and I fuck with you, bro. Mama ain't raised no bitch, you know what to do. But yeah, so we were in St. Louis for a while, doing shows. Linked up with Matt Love too. What's up, Matt? Just got a lot of love from just musicians in St. Louis. Like, musicians were just like, man, that's tight that you can just like spit over whatever the fuck, you know what I'm saying? So I had a couple of groups like invite me on stage to perform with them and shit like that. That was super tight. Went out to Columbia, Missouri, and that was super dope too. Won a contest for $100. There was like this little talent show happening at this hookah bar. We're walking around and like trying to scrape together ends. I had started to do the rap for tips thing around that time, you know what I'm saying, because we're still kind of like living out this RV, kind of bumming it real hard, you know what I'm saying. So we got like, I'm not just trying to fucking bullshit, but I started to pick up painting around this same time, and so I was cutting up the cardboard, doing paintings, and then I decided in St. Louis to make this sign that said all rap for donations. So I would hang it from my neck, walk around, and when people would be like, oh yeah, spit something, what do you got, blah blah blah, I would start asking people if they had words that they wanted me to rhyme or topics and shit like that, and we started generating some cake from that shit. And so we're walking around just trying to find the next bag, and homeboy's like, yo, there's a talent show, $100 cash prize, let's do this shit, blah blah blah. So we go. There's not a lot of contestants really in the show. It was kind of like set up like American Idol, and there was like the real hard to impress judge, playing the Simon Cowell role, and I just went and fucking gave the best performance that I possibly could deliver. Like, I think it, up until that point, was the best performance I had ever done. And so this one was like pretty thrown back by the performance, and I ended up taking the cash, and we keep hustling, doing our thing, and end up in Kansas City, Missouri. That's where we decide to part ways. He had a sister out there, just felt like it was best for him to stay there, in his best interest. So me and the homeboy decided to hop on the Greyhound back to New Mexico. When I got back here, that's when I started recording, a lot of the records for substance abuse, some of the other records that come out, that have came out in the last few years, I did back then. One of them is this remix that I did to Twista's Adrenaline Rush called No Offense. That's also like some kind of recycled stuff. Like, I had come up with the hook a while back, and it was one of the Stackhouse music songs, and the first verse is on the Stackhouse music song,